everyone. Welcome to yet another specialized edition of The Sunday Show, because this is a topic that has been highly requested. As of recording this video, we have just come to the end of RuPaul's Drag Race Global All-Stars. And I may have mentioned this before, I can't remember, but this season was such a train wreck that I actually was considering doing a main channel video on it. Until, the Drag Race community started being mean to me on Twitter, which is, an occurrence that I'm pretty used to at this point, but I just kind of had enough. So I'm not doing Drag Race, on any of my public-facing, entities at this point. So the good news about being subscribed to my Patreon is that I get to talk about it here and give all of my honest thoughts and opinions. And, I have a lot of them. I guess I'll start broadly with the fact that, I have not been impressed by any of the stuff related to Drag Race that Paramount has produced since All-Star 6. I feel like All-Star 6 was the only kind of competent thing under the franchise that they've ever made that has gotten produced specifically for that channel. And that makes sense because that was around the time that Paramount Plus was just launching and they were putting a lot of investment into it, trying to make it the next big thing in streaming. And so it makes a little bit more sense that All-Star 6 was kind of a higher caliber and quality because they were trying to attract people to the service and also keep a little bit of faith in the fan base that moving to streaming could potentially be a good decision. And for All-Star 6, I think that worked pretty well. But as time has gone on, we've had All-Star 7, we've had All-Stars 8, All-Stars 9, and Global All-Stars as Paramount Plus entities, and it seems like with each, passing entry into the franchise, the folks at Paramount, or whoever, I don't know if it's what the breakdown is, I don't know if it's World of Wonder producing it specifically, I've heard it's the Columbia studio that they shoot at for the international stuff, I don't know whose fault it is, but to me, I just perceive it in the sense that, everything that happens to go on Paramount Plus, that is related to Drag Race just gets shittier and shittier with each installment. And I think with a concept like Global All-Stars, which is something that people have been advocating for since the international spin-offs of Drag Race have started to get popular and get their own individual fandoms, it needed to not be like that. Everybody involved had to give a fuck in order for it to work. It should have been treated like a mainstay US season. It should have its own pit stop. It should have had its own What You Packin'. They should have invited all of the non-US cast to the New York City press tour instead of just having Alyssa promote it. Not only that, and I've talked about this before the last time I did kind of a mid-early year season update on catching up on Global All-Stars, but in order for this to work, I think it had to have a less American-centric point of view, and that clearly was just not going to happen with Rue and Michelle being the most present folks on the judging panel. Everyone kind of knew beforehand, when the cast was announced, who was probably going to make it far, because notoriously most of the time when they kind of mix in these international folks, a Rue girl, somebody who was previously judged by Rue and Michelle, usually gets crowned. And of course we started seeing the obvious kind of favored treatment of Queen Kong and Kitty Scott Claus and Alyssa Edwards, and I hate to frame it that way because I feel like a lot of times people throw this around very loosely and they don't know what they're talking about, but I don't know, I try to look at this as objectively as possible, and I say this as someone who, was a fan of these three previous queens in their seasons. It was just so obvious that a lot of the international queens were either not being understood in their point of view or they were just being ignored in service of kind of pushing these three forward. I first noticed it in the girl group challenge earlier on in the season when Galavaro was miles above everybody else in that challenge, and she wasn't even in the top. She wasn't even acknowledged in the judging. She was just safe, and I was like, oh, okay, I don't like how this is going. It became a little bit more noticeable, one, when they just wouldn't say anything about Kitty's outfits that were kind of just not on par with some of the other members of the cast, and two, when Alyssa was clearly doing bad, and again, Alyssa's very important to the Drag Race pantheon, and I understand the need to kind of handle her a different way than the rest of this cast, unfortunately, but the thing about Alyssa is that she's not good at Drag Race. she's a great reality TV character. She's well respected among her peers, I guess, kind of. We can get into that a little later. But she's not good at Drag Race, and she never has been. And so to see the show just kind of like constantly forget that fact instead of acknowledging it was crazy. Where this season really lost me, though, was when they eliminated Pythia during her first time in the bottom. And if I recall that challenge correctly, like, I'm not saying that she didn't deserve to be kind of near the bottom, but I don't know. That's really where this show lost me. I was like, oh, they're really not interested in, like, having anything kind of remotely interesting happen. I feel like, you know, Galavaro, Miranda Lebrau, Vanity Vane, and of course Pythia being the biggest example to me, like, all of them, even the other ones I didn't, even the queens, Soda Muse, like, there were so many queens on this cast that had so much, like, uniqueness and, like, such a unique perspective to offer, and just the fact that, like, that Pythia kind of got shafted in that way, when, in my opinion, she's been, like, one of the most well-rounded and, like, strongest competitors that, like, Drag Race as a whole has seen in a while. Like, it really left a bad taste in my mouth. Like, it pissed me off for real. I also think, speaking of leaving a bad taste in your mouth, the thing that pissed a lot of people off was sort of the treatment of Nilania during all of this, and, like, I don't know. I've talked about this before. I don't think the interactions that Kitty and Queen and Alyssa had at any point on this season on camera, I don't know what happened off camera, but on camera, like, I don't think it ever reached a boiling point of unacceptable, you know what I mean? Like, at the end of the day, this is reality TV, and maybe that's just, like, a flaw in my thinking, I don't know, like, I just don't perceive that as bullying. I do think Nilania, got the short end of the stick a lot of the time this season, but, you know, obviously people were very off-put by the way that, like, Kitty and Queen, who previously were, like, very likable, came off, like, in their interactions with Nilania, and it wasn't ever really explained why they were so hostile toward her, and then, like, instead of Alyssa being involved in any of that, it seemed like she was almost kind of, like, shielded from it, which doesn't make sense because it's Alyssa. In her previous 2 seasons, she was, like, you know, the revolving star of all of the main drama, so it made no sense that she just, like, was not participating in it. A lot of that, I feel like, was left on a cutting room floor somewhere. And then I feel like once all of the interesting international queens were gone, it was just kind of Nilania that people were rooting for against the other 3. I think the last episode that I, like, was truly, like, somewhat engaged in was the makeover episode. And then after that, I was like, this is so fucking boring. Like, how is Tessa Testicle still here? I've talked about this before. I have nothing against Tessa personally, obviously, but the fact that she made it as far as she did, in service of, like, good reality TV when there were other queens who were definitely, like, pushing their weight above her, Pythia in particular, like, it just, like, it bothered me because I was just like, this is the one spin-off that, like, needed so much care for it to be good, because it was a complex thing that they were trying to do, and I just can't believe they went with, like, the most transparent kind of plan here that ended up pissing everybody off, because if I'm the producers of this season, I'm catering to, you know, the queens with the biggest, like, from the places with the biggest fan bases, and I've said this before, but, like, that's Mexico, that's Brazil, that's the Philippines. So I guess now I'll just talk about how this all shook out. I actually did kind of enjoy the eliminated queens lip sync tournament. I think that's a great thing that they've added to the show that I hope they keep doing because it's been really fun. And I love that Soa Muse just got a chance to shine. She just, like, radiates joy whenever she lip syncs, and I thought it was a good episode. I think the fact that they used RuPaul songs for the entire, like, gauntlet of the episode is somehow even worse than, like, in All Stars 9, where they just used a bank of songs that they already had the rights to because they used them in previous, like, regular season episodes. Like, the production team, like, truly did not give a fuck about this season. What do you mean that, like, all of the songs that they lip synced to in this tournament were RuPaul songs? Like, what do you mean? In the end, I think you know, everybody was rooting for Nelania just based on, like, you know, the fact that Alyssa had a very lukewarm run where they were clearly protecting her from lip syncing, and also the fact that she has kind of, like, a shitty reputation, off stage, and I can't personally attest to, like, the production drama that went on, because apparently some people said that she was, like, really rude to the PAs on set. I can't, like, personally attest to that. I do know people, though, like, who have worked in, like, the club scene with her, and they say that she is, like, very rude and unprofessional. Like, I've had personal, like, you know, connections tell me that, and I'm inclined to believe them based on, like, you know, just their reputation and who I know. But in all the on-camera instances, Alyssa's performance was mid, and they were protecting her from the bottom, but that was less offensive than Kitty and Queen, who were kind of cunts the whole season, to most people. To me, like, I think Kitty was kind of more of a cunt than Queen was, and Kitty, like, had some pretty mid runways, so I think that kind of, like, pissed people off in general. But yeah, Nelania was kind of the only likable one left, and I don't know if this is true or not. I just kind of read this on Reddit in passing earlier today, that, like, they didn't even put, like, the Instagram polls up. I think, like, so many people would have been pushing for Nelania on those that they didn't even put them up. Like, they didn't even want that perception to be out there at all, which is interesting to me, because, like, then why even have Nelania in the top 4? Just, like, cut it and make it a top 3. So I think people were just kind of hanging on, being like, okay, maybe given all of the outside antics that have happened this season, they'll crown Nelania, they'll do the right thing, and they absolutely did not do that. They crowned Alyssa, which, like I said, I guess is technically the least offensive choice of the 3 people they actually were potentially going to crown, because at the end of the day, we all know they were going to crown a Rue girl for sure, but it just feels very unearned because Alyssa's run on this season was, like, so fucking mid. In some episodes, like, she's barely in any of them. You literally forget that she's there. And also, it's just bad optics to be an American show and be like, you know what, we're gonna host a franchise that's like the Olympics of drag, and, you know, we're gonna, like, showcase all of these queens from all of these different franchises, and then in the end you go, you know what, actually America is the best at drag. That's what we've decided. That's what the whole narrative point of this season has been, is that America is the best, and if you're not from an American franchise, then, like, eat shit and die, I guess. This was so bad. And not even, like, in an interesting train wreck way. I really had to push myself through watching the end of the season, to make this video, and I haven't, like, done that since UK3, which is my least favorite season of Drag Race of all time, probably. Like, this was just, like, a fucking disaster, and it had the potential to be a home run if anyone producing it, like, gave even a little bit of a fuck about, like, the fans that they were trying to appease here and who they actually should have been working to, like, please. Like, as fucked up as that sounds, like, this, you know, this should have been a celebration for the international queens who don't get as much love as some of the, you know, the Rue judged girls. That's what this should have been, but there was, like, just kind of, like, a big fumble, either due to a lack of ego involved or just, like, a general incompetence. I have no fucking idea, but, like, the fact that this happened is so insane. Those are my thoughts. I don't know if this is ever gonna get, like, a season 2. Maybe it will. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments down below. Thanks so much, you guys, and I'll see you next time.